You're listening to the Mike on the Right podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mike on the Right program. I am your host, Mike Neal, and yes, I am broadcasting from the heart of the heartland in central Indiana, the crossroads of America, the great Hoosier state. Please continue to like, share, subscribe, 5-star ratings. This show is here because of you, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of you that have joined me on the journey. This episode and all others before it, you can find at mikeontheright.com. That's going to take you to YouTube if you want to watch the video, or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. This is episode 33, Monday, December 15th, 2025, release date. And we're going to get started right here and now. 3 items to talk about today. Of course, controversy lives everywhere, and anything I talk about is certainly going to be controversial. I certainly could be talking about the redistricting loss in Indiana, and of course, there's going to be people that have that position that are mad and people that are glad. I'm not talking about that today. That is a dead horse that has been whipped and beat. I'm not talking about that. We're first going to talk about something that's just as controversial, though, which is the ongoing distrust of the media in America and how it affects our elections, our perceptions, and our everyday life. And there's some new data that's come out here in the last couple of months that continues to drive that home. And I want to talk about that as we get down to the Christmas season, as we're currently in that right now, and really the kickoff of the 2026 midterm elections. And then we're going to talk about how the climate crisis in America has been forced to give way to the affordability crisis in America. And we're going to talk about kind of what has shifted in the last couple of years, not just the election of Donald Trump, but how affordability in America has pushed things like that by the wayside. And finally, we're going to talk about the healthcare battle that continues to go on. We've been talking about this Obamacare subsidy issue. I talked about it in the last episode, and really the GOP nightmare that is being relived right now, and how can we come past that. First, let's start with the media question. If you're hearing the sound of my voice, I have joined the media. I am on the dark side. I am a podcaster, which is just a version of new media. I may not be Tom Brokaw or somebody on Dateline or wherever you might get your news, Fox News, CNN, whatever talking head, but I am a talking head now. Some of my friends would say that I've been a talking head for years, just not on a microphone. But in America, we have had this ongoing problem for a long time, but specifically in the last 10 years, in the era of Donald Trump, there has been this dive bomb attack of the media on people and topics and issues that they don't like, because it doesn't fit a narrative. And if you're listening to the sound of my voice now, you know my position that most media leans left-wing. There's very few outlets across the whole of the United States that leans to the right. Most of them lean to the left. And there is scientific data that proves that behind that. And you may sit here and be like, I don't believe that. I believe that MSNBC is always telling the truth. And no. But that doesn't mean that Fox News always tells the truth either. In fact, very rarely do I watch. I have a TV here in my office. When I work here in my office, I typically will have Fox Live on, which is not the Fox News that you're thinking about, the Fox Network. And they just take live cuts of anything that's going on in the moment. So if there's something going on in Congress, a speech, a debate, something in the UN, whatever, they're not sitting there kind of pontificating the news over and over. They're just bringing live shots. And I really like that, because I like to hear the source. I don't ever believe the media writing something for me and summarizing things for me, because a bias will always be added. You can say the same thing for Fox News or Newsmax, anybody, right? So I don't usually watch most of the media today at all. I like to read. I read pretty much everything to educate myself, and then that way I feel like I'm well-rounded on the argument. And sometimes that challenges the way I think. Most of the time, reading everything kind of is like, okay, now I know what the other sides to the debate might believe, different than me or different than the writer or what have you. But back here in October, the last couple of months ago, Gallup, I believe, did another national media trust poll. And lo and behold, the media is at a new all-time low of trust at the ripe percentage of 28%. Certainly more popular and trusted than Congress, but nonetheless a horrible and abysmal poll. And turning now to, as a conservative, as a Republican trust in the media overall has dropped to 8%, single digit. Now, you might sit here and say, Mike, Republicans are just curmudgeons. They just want to hear what they want to hear. They want to hear what they believe, and if it's not regurgitated to them, then it must be false and it must be wrong. There is certainly a subset of any group, conservative, Republican, Democrat, liberal, progressive, socialist, Green Party, libertarian, that certainly loves to hear their position validated. I think that's a human trait. And certainly we always need to be challenged in our thinking in policy and in politics and in education and in government, and take your pick, in music and entertainment and media, all of those things, to get better, right? To understand people better, or to sharpen our own position, or to change direction or shift our position. But you can't deny, that means that if 8% trust, that means 92% of Republicans do not trust the media. You've got to say that there is a group of moderate Republicans or traditional conservatives, certainly the populace. There are people that, if you're listening to me today and you're moderate or down the middle or left wing or whatever it is you have a position, I'm taking the right wing conservatives out of this for a second. 92% of Republicans don't trust the media. The ones that you find reasonable, the ones that you feel reasonable for voting down redistricting in Indiana, the ones you find reasonable in trying to put the pressure on the U.S. House of Representatives for any one thing or another, on tariffs or on military action or on what have you. Those that you think and feel are more reasonable, most of them don't trust the media either. What does that tell you? That it is not just the fake news crowd, which I believe most news has an element of truth, but otherwise is editorialized, which is why I hate traditional news media. But those that the left would see as reasonable Republicans there's no way that in that 92% percentage of people who don't trust the media as Republicans are not those that you see reasonable. That means that even in that group, they see at least in part what Donald Trump stepped on the platform all those years ago to say, the fake news and CNN and MSNBC, all the things that he said. I didn't do the Trump voice. I did the worst. But, and so what that tells me is, and what that should tell you is, as the listener now bringing everyone back to the fold, is that there's inherent distrust in the media because they have propped up narratives or positions, or not told the truth, or fabricated a lie, or all of those things. And they get caught time and time and time and time again. And for a moment, of course, they get into crisis communication mode and somebody gets fired and this and that, but they go right back to it. And let me tell you why all of this matters when I talk about how it affects elections and perceptions and everyday life. There is a subset of people who hate Donald Trump because the media constantly reports negatives. They miss the fact that the tariff revenue has brought the trade deficit to an all-time low in the last 5 years, since the last 5 years, or has brought down the deficit in certain circumstances. Now, there's a lot to be done here. We spend way too much. President Trump has allowed too much to be spent. DOGE did not complete its mission. It's an abysmal failure. All those things are true. But the media doesn't repeat all of the good things that are occurring. They just repeat what's happening. And same thing with these immigration crackdowns. Again, you may sit here today and say, I am against it. In any position, if you're a liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, unlabeled, super labeled, whatever it is, you may disagree with it. That's cool. That's fine. That's your right. You have the right to do so. And all sides probably have legitimate points because nothing is ever done perfectly. But all these stories that get told, oftentimes there's a piece that the media leaves out. The same thing with so we have the economy, they leave things out. We have the immigration realignment in America, leaves things out. So how can you trust when people leave things out? And it's done on purpose. It's not that they don't know. It's not that not at the larger level. It's not that they don't know. They just don't agree. And so these things affect elections. Now, Republicans, we're going to talk about this here in another segment, but Republicans have trouble on their hands, and part of that is their own doing, and part of that is their own doing being taken to an nth degree and an extreme by the media that may lose us the 2026 elections in the U.S. House of Representatives. I think the Senate's a better path to keep. And I'm not going to get into election predictions yet. It's far too early. Most polls don't matter. Lots of time to turn the ship in any direction, make it worse, far worse, or make it better. But let's even take politics out of it. If people are reporting on medicine or education or whatever, and they're lying, they can't be trusted, that affects, or we're duped into something. That changes the day-to-day life of everyday Americans. And how can we allow that to continue? And for me, it's just not feeding into the beast. Now, again, in the profession that I'm in and the things that I do, I'm part of my job, a part of my position, and part of what I do in life is predicated on knowing as many things as I can going on in current events today. I'm not an expert in everything that I read and see and do, but I do enough research to understand that, and there are certain things that I'll never, don't have a PhD, I'm not a heart doctor, I'm not a climatologist, I'm not whatever, right? But most people can look at data and extrapolate information to a certain extent. But if the media is feeding us and we don't do anything else to check it, if we don't check out what the Supreme Court actually said about something, if we don't actually go look at a law, if we don't actually go read the arrest report, if we don't actually, whatever, if we don't go back to the source, and that's what I want to plead to you today as I close this particular segment, move on. Don't just trust the media that you like. Certainly don't trust the media that has already, fooled you. But even if you're sitting here today and you're listening to me and you say, I love Fox News, it is the best thing ever. They are so truthful. There is always an element of editorialization in the reporting of news. Go read the source documents of what... I'm not saying don't take it. If you want to take it in. Then go read the source. Go read the full report. Go read the full story. If you really are going to go out, and then especially if you're going to go out and try to talk about it or change minds or educate, actually know what you're talking about. Please. Because then you contribute to the spread of the fake news that you don't like. Liberals have been doing it for a long time. They're the ones that have controlled most media. It's why they hated people like Rush Limbaugh. They couldn't control them. It's why they hate Mark Levin. It's why they hate Sean Hannity. It's why they hate Tucker Carlson. Now, Tucker Carlson's got his own problems. I don't care for him anymore. He went off the rails. I got to close this segment or I'll continue to go long, and you know how that is when I go long. I usually got to cut something. Let's talk about something else that's just as controversial. Let's talk about how the climate crisis, and I'm putting that in air quotes because, got shelved in the affordability ring going on in America. How affordability won in America. How the affordability issue has shelved the climate issue. The climate crisis hasn't disappeared. The Al Gores of the world are still out there in the middle of a snowstorm telling you how hot things are. But it's collided with reality, and reality has won. When affordability met ideology, affordability prevailed. Voters didn't suddenly become anti-environment. Voters didn't suddenly become pro-environment. So nothing in the electorate itself, in their minds, if you already have an implacable position on either side, has changed. What has changed people's mind is the pocketbook. Energy prices and food costs and household budgets are here for a reckoning. Certainly, we've seen growth in wages, but we're continuing to live, and I want to make this very clear. This is a fact. You don't have to like it. It is a fact. In macroeconomics, and that's why I want to talk about climate specifically, but I want to talk about the economic piece first because I'm really here to talk about affordability and why some of this got shelved. In macroeconomics, anything you do in the economy, for the most part, not everything, but most things, when you enact something, a law, stimulus, whatever, it takes time to trickle through the economy, a year or two, sometimes more. Nothing is immediate in that way. Some things are immediate. What's most immediate is the reactions on the emotional side, which is like the stock market. And so right now we are living in some of this affordability stuff, the bad decisions that were made in the previous administration, because macroeconomics, the science of macroeconomics dictates that. So the huge soar that we had in inflation, of course, we saw it in the immediate moment as prices went up, but now we're not seeing them come down because certain things don't come down because inflation continues. And so what's happened here is we've built this huge mountain of cost increase, and then it kind of plateaued, and now it's just kind of steadily going up. And Donald Trump's being blamed for why it's up here. Well, no. Realize who built the incline to begin with, which are all those people in the Biden administration and Secretary Yellen that said, this is all transitional. This is not going to happen. This is very short term. They absolutely lied to the American people. So again, but the ones that are currently in office are the Trump and the Republicans. And so there are many things that need to be done. And for the election, as I talked about in the last segment, this ship can be turned around. There's a lot of time. Voters' memories are short. No poll today means absolutely anything. Of course, they got history working against them because, midterms are usually unfavorable to any party that's currently in power. It's just the science, political science, plain and simple. But there's time to right that ship. But this has all been built on the previous administration. In macroeconomics, I don't like to blame the last people for a lot of things because I think that's a scapegoat. But economic science dictates that. Plain and simple, fact. And then, of course, Trump with tariffs and all the different things. Not saying that can't exacerbate things one way or the other or make them better or make them worse or any economic policy. But we're built on that foundation of that increase. Now, we've seen egg prices drop. We've seen all this stuff. But I want to talk specifically, why did I bring up the climate piece? It's because we have been forced to, in certain cities and towns, stop using natural gas. We have been told that we have to stop using coal. And we've got to go to electrification, which, by the way, you can't just plug something in the ground and get electric out of it. You have to produce it, and currently the most production is happening with fossil fuels. In California, 60% of their electricity is created by natural gas. They won't tell you that, but that's the truth. And so the hypocritical piece is always what gets me. We've been told that we can't have gas stoves. We've been told that we have to make our house out of this or that. We are told that we have to transition to electric cars. We've been told that we can't have cow flatulence, and we've got to try to. We've been told all these things. And I remember as a kid, I talked about this many episodes ago when I talked specifically about some climate stuff. There used to be a magazine, that Time magazine. They may still do it. I don't know. Time magazine used to create Time for Kids, and I think it was like once a month. My memory from elementary school fades, but I remember getting Time for Kids, and I remember specifically being told as a kid growing up in the 90s that by this time, right now, where we sit today, New York City and much of the coastal U.S. that we know today would be underwater because of melting ice caps. Now, ice caps have grown and shrunk over time, right? We're seeing some of that. But I remember in the early 2010s and 2011 that Antarctic ice was larger than it had ever been in quite some time. It expands and contracts. And climate science gets expensive because it's more about virtue signaling and feeling good rather than it is about actual science and actual action. Now, look, when it comes to the environment, I am in the position of we don't need to needlessly hurt the environment. We have been given dominion over Earth to use it and its resources and everything on it for the betterment of people and to the glory of God. Now, anything can be adulterated away from that, right? We can just like anything in life. And so we certainly don't want to do things to the environment and to our earth that are unnecessary. But at the same time, we don't want to do anything that stops the progress, growth, health, and economics of mankind. So there's a balance that has to be struck. And every time, we get a bunch of pro-environmentalists in Congress or in, in the government that are far radical on those issues, we get a lot of the policy, like these fuel efficiency standards in California, well beyond the rest of the United States, which are unsustainable. This is why the Net Zero Alliance is totally breaking apart, because none of it's sustainable. And I want to tell you something. The United States is not the problem. It might have been used. I'm not saying that it doesn't contribute, but it is not the problem anymore. And I'm pulling my phone only because it wasn't in my notes. I saw it as I was getting ready to start recording the segment today, and it was data from the U.S. government related to how much pollution, CO2 specifically, for everything other than land use conversions. So energy and industry and all the major things that would contribute to that. The United States, 4.9 billion tons per year. You want to know who's almost 3 times that? China. And Asia, which is Asia overall, is double what China is as a whole. And so the United States has done more than anybody in the large industrial world to slow emissions and to decrease them. In fact, we've had a decrease. For the first time in history, we have started to see over especially the last decade, we've started to see a plateau and that number coming down because we have been more efficient with how we burn fuel and more efficient in how we make things and more efficient in how we capture things and more efficient in how we mitigate those circumstances. And we should absolutely do those things as one, we are able, and two, as the market dictates. Because sometimes if the market is not there to do something, we can't afford it, and then government has to subsidize it, or prices go up. You want to know why energy prices have spiked over time? Part of that is overregulation. You want to know why it's expensive to produce electricity from wind and solar? It's because the battery technology is not there yet to store it. I'm not saying that it's not a good supplement to the system. I'm not saying it's not a part of America's energy future. But that stuff gets expensive because the market's not there. I think I said this in a previous episode. A wise man once told me that when the Model T came around, the government didn't ban horses. Over time, it became a science that got better and more affordable, and people stopped riding horses because it was less efficient, and the tipping scale occurred. It balanced the other direction. Same thing with this in anything. And so at the end of the day, I've got to move on. You feel what you want about the climate and about climate science. But at the end of the day, the science is not settled, and the United States is not the problem. We can do more and better, and always should. But we have to look to other countries and other places who are not doing what China's has not dropped, by the way. It has continued to skyrocketly increase. That's where the problem is. And if environmentalists want to attack something, that's what to go after. Good luck. Last topic I have for you today is the healthcare battle in America and where things are. You've probably talked about this in the last episode and in episodes past about this ongoing Obamacare subsidy issue. To recap very briefly, the subsidies that are about to expire are COVID subsidies that should not any longer exist. Yet now Democrats and liberals are saying the Republicans are gutting healthcare and they're just wiping out poor people's healthcare. Which, again, this was not a permanent piece. This was temporary. COVID is long gone and over, affecting our economy and affecting our everyday life. Period. But the Republicans don't have a plan. And if there's a couple things I've been disappointed with the Republicans on over time, it is on healthcare. And when Obamacare came around, we had no alternative. We had no plan. We had nothing to contribute. And over the last 10 years, President Trump has talked about, we're going to have a health care plan. All these. Now, he's done some good things with lowering drug prices and letting things happen over interstate, like a number of things that are good. But the insurance industry and the healthcare industry are rackets. Absolute rackets. And they're allowed to say that they're all running and losing money because they'll charge your insurance $8,000, but the cash price is $250. So they get to write all that off as a loss. Bullcrap. The Republicans don't have a plan. Period. And that's why the Republicans are now kind of in this nightmare scenario on, when we went to try to repeal Obamacare, and everybody remembers John McCain doing the thumbs down and Mitch McConnell and just very sad. And we've never had a plan. We've always wanted to repeal, which I believe there's a lot of things that Obamacare has done damage to the healthcare system. It made things more expensive, but we don't have anything to replace it with. You can't repeal without replace. What is our plan? We need to reform insurance system. We need to reform the healthcare system. And no, it is not single payer because government is bad at most things. There are some things that government can do. The healthcare market is not one of them. We saw that it failed in Canada where they were begging private insurers to come back. We see it in the United Kingdom where we all got free health care, but you got cancer and it's going to take you 6 months to see somebody. Like, government's bad at it. So no, I don't want to trust the government to be my payer and to allow people to choose what kind of care I get and don't get. That's between me and a doctor when it comes to personal health care. And that's why private insurance, but it needs to be reformed because it's not, again, it is the best form. It is a bad form, but is better than all the others. And so the Republicans, and as I close the show today, Republicans need to formulate a plan on this topic and on this issue. And, this is a nightmare scenario for Republicans because what's probably going to happen is I'm betting enough people are going to come over and they're going to extend the subsidies because that's the easiest thing. Because we're not going to get a health care plan between now in 15 days and the end of the year. Nor is anyone going to show up to vote for it. But the Republicans need to come up with a health care plan. We don't currently have it. And I'm not calling for the subsidies to be extended. I just think that's what's going to happen. But it's a nightmare scenario for the Republicans. We've been here before, and we didn't fix it before. We just we skated by. Whew, we're good. And then it's like, oh, crap. I procrastinated long enough, and I have nothing. So until we have something else, we're going to continue to get the crap kicked out of us. And that's the whole part of this whole thing. We have time to message. We have time to right the ship on affordability and healthcare and all the different things. But if we're voting today, the U.S. House of Representatives goes to the Democrats. And so Republicans need to get on it. Folks, thank you so much for listening today. Again, continue to like, share, subscribe, 5-star ratings. MikeOnTheRight.com. You can get this episode and all those before it on video and audio. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great week.